The following is a production of Notch 6 Media.
It's the Notch 6 online podcast, episode number 49. In this episode, the story of a 12-year-old boy assembling couplers in Jerry Williams' basement and how that boy grew up to run one of the most successful O-gauge train companies in the United States. MTH founder Mike Wolf is here, and we'll talk to him about everything from his early days working for Jerry Williams to the future of MTH and what you can expect coming down the pipe in the world of O-gauge trains. It's a fascinating interview celebrating 35 years of MTH trains, and it's all here on Notch 6.
This is the Notch 6 online podcast. Notch 6 is the podcast dedicated to O-gauge trains. Whether you're collecting, operating, or just getting started, Notch 6 is your home for O-gauge news, events, and interviews. Now here is your host, Derek Thomas.
Well, welcome to Notch 6, the online podcast dedicated to O-gauge trains, brought to you each and every episode by your friends at Trains.com. That's Trains spelled with a Z. Trains is your one-stop online for Lionel, MTH, Atlas O, and so much more in the world of O-gauge. At Trains.com, you can pre-order the latest O-gauge items, bid on their exclusive weekly auctions, and Trains can even repair your O-gauge trains, whether they're brand new with PS2, PS3 legacy, or your old post-war and pre-war items. Be sure to visit Trains.com before you go anywhere else for your next O-gauge purchase. Well, welcome to the show. It's 2015, and you regular listeners know this by now, but you are at the one place in the world of podcasting that talks specifically about O-gauge trains. It's great to be back with you for another exciting episode. And boy, we're kicking this year off right. MTH founder Mike Wolf will be with us for this episode. And I got to tell you, this is a really dynamic episode. If you're not excited about the world of O-gauge trains after this episode, then there's something wrong with you. Because the passion and enthusiasm that Mike Wolf brings to this interview and clearly for this hobby is just outstanding. So I think you guys are going to have a great time listening to Mike kind of tell his story about how he got into the business and tell you some things that you guys have probably never heard before. It's going to be a great episode. So to rewind for a second, if you didn't catch it at the top of the show, we have a new sponsor here at Notch 6. Would like to say welcome to Scott Griggs and the Trains family down in Georgia, and that's Trains spelled with a Z. Scott has been a friend of mine for a number of years now, and he recently approached me and said, Derek, I like what you're doing over here at Notch 6. Is there any way that we can help you out? And I said, absolutely. If you'd like to lend your support to the show, we'd be happy to have you. So they have come on board and are going to help us out, and that's going to allow us to grow the show bigger, better, and hopefully allow us to explore some new opportunities in 2015 that'll be really exciting. And if you're looking for a great online retailer, don't hesitate to check out Trains.com. Scott is a good guy. Scott is very, very passionate about this hobby, and they do a great job, and I really hope that you will give them a try. It's Trains, spelled with a Z.com. So what else is new as we roll into 2015? It's going to be a big year here at Notch 6. We're already dreaming about some things, thinking about some things that will hopefully come to fruition here in the next 11 and a half months. Some big interviews that we would like to land this year, although we've been on a roll here for a few months now, and I'm not sure how much longer we can keep it going in terms of having these big names come in month after month, but we're gonna keep doing the best that we can. And like I said, you'll see some new segments introduced here on Notch 6 this year. One specifically that will be coming in the next few weeks. I have partnered with O-Gauge Railroading Magazine for a new segment. So that will debut during the February episode, the second February episode, I guess that would be. A couple things before we get rolling here. Update from the Madison Poster Company. The D145 poster from last year is retiring at the end of February. That is the final word. It's going to happen, it's going away, and it's not coming back. So if you've been thinking about a D145 dealer display poster from the Madison Poster Company, I suggest you act quickly. MadisonPoster.com is the website. I've got a few of the large ones left. Small ones are still available as well. But if you're thinking about it, February 28th is it. After that, they go bye-bye. But the good news is we have a new poster coming. And I'm not going to spill the beans just yet. Now, I have sent an email out to the folks that bought a big D145 poster from last year. We're going to give them the first crack at it. And so during the February episode, I'll tell you all about the new poster, and we'll post some pictures of it over at the Notch 6 Facebook page when we get there. But rest assured, a new poster is coming. It's very, very cool, and it's very, very big, although we will also offer a smaller size as well for those people who don't have half of a wall to give away to a really, really awesome Lionel poster. So that's coming very, very soon. The other thing I want to tell you guys about before we get rolling here is the Lionel 2015 Volume 1 Catalog Special. It is a done deal. It's going to happen. It was one of our most successful episodes last year, so we thought, well, we better do it again. And so that will be coming to you February 2nd. Release time is just after 9 a.m. Eastern. I would say anywhere between probably 9:05 and 9:15. That would be a pretty good window to come and check Notch6.com. We have always prided our catalog shows to be kind of a companion piece to the catalog, so you can hop on the Lionel website, flip through the new catalogs, and at the same time you can listen along, and we will have Matt Ashbaugh, Mike Reagan, and others along from Lionel to discuss some of the new features in the catalog. You'll get some exclusive information that's not found in the catalog, and you'll also get somewhat of a maybe a timetable on when we might see these items come into your local dealer. So join us for the Lionel Catalog Special. It's coming February 2nd, just around 9 a.m. Eastern. One more thing before we get rolling into the Mike Wolf interview. Just to give you kind of a layout update for the month of January, I've been playing around a little bit. My big purchase for this month actually was something I wasn't planning on, and that was a Lionel Legacy R16 Subway set from, I think it was 2010, 2011. And my layout is kind of set in the hills and the mountains, and you can see photos of the layout on the Notch 6 Facebook page. But wasn't planning on a Subway at all. Right opportunity came along, and suddenly I have a Subway set running around my layout. And I'll be honest with you, it's really, really cool. The station announcements, the opening and closing doors, the lights. I mean, it's just a really neat setup. I've been lucky enough to go to New York City a couple of times and ride the New York subway system. So for me, it has some memories for me, but at the same time, it's just a really cool set, and the technology that's packed into the set is really cool. Other than that, not a lot happening with scenery, except that I'm working on building some new building flats to go along the wall and hide the ugly brick wall that is my basement. And so that's coming along nicely as well. And other than that, with the business going with Madison Poster and all the new things we've got going at Notch 6, I'm not spending near as much time in the basement as I usually do. So things are keeping me bouncing pretty well here. Okay, so we won't keep you guys waiting any longer. It's time to get to Mike Wolf, the founder of MTH. This is a great interview. So happy that I did this interview, and I'm hoping that what you take away from this interview is Mike's passion and enthusiasm. And I'm just going to give you a heads up. The last question that I ask him, I want you guys to listen really, really closely to the answer, because I'm hoping this changes some folks' minds about some things that have happened in the hobby over the years. So please listen very, very closely to Mike's last answer during this interview, and I hope you enjoy it. Here we go.
This is Notch 6, your first source for breaking news and in-depth interviews in the world of O-Gauge.
Well, welcome back to the Notch 6 online podcast. We're going to start 2015 off right with a big name in the world of O-Gauge. His name is Mike Wolf. You may know him as the founder of MTH Electric Trains. Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's exciting to have you here, and I'll tell you a story. I've been chasing Andy Edelman for this interview for almost 2 years now, and he finally said, okay, I'll forward the email to Mike, and we'll put this thing together. And, you know, it's appropriate that we're starting off 2015 talking to you, because it's a big year for MTH. This is your 35th year in business. That's just got to be exciting for you. Tell me what you guys are looking forward to about 35 years at MTH.
Well, we're going to continue to make most of our time is spent on making 1,500 different, and I think it's grown over that, 1,500 different items in a year, and trying to new tools, and you're focused on that. So the 35 years is, it wasn't really mentioned early on at our place until the catalog was almost done. I said, "You guys realize it's our 35th year?" So it's not something that is a big a push to another year, and more products you want to get out, and more ideas that you have, and I'm more involved in the what are we doing for the next year and the next year and the next year than focusing on that. But it allows you to sit back sometimes and reflect of all the different things that's happened and how the industry's changed and how old I'm getting and that type of thing.
And we'll touch on some of that today, and that's one of the exciting things is we get to kind of have an overarching view of the last 35 years. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, take me way back, even before the time you started with Williams. You got to tell me, how did you even get interested in toy trains to begin with? Well,
the interest was when I was I always had a train set. My dad had a train set, and he'd set it up on the pool table, rarely during the year, but most of the time it would be under the Christmas tree, and it was, it represented Christmas. It was a Lionel train set that my dad told me the story as young as I can remember, that he saved up for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he lived on a farm in Beaver. He didn't have much money, and he worked and got enough money and bought that train set. Went down to the hardware store and bought that train set, and it was always under a Christmas tree. It 10 plate cars, and it was 226, and it was a 224, excuse me, a 224E. And 10 plate cars, and had it for years. So I mean, I knew it that way, but when I was a kid, I was into cars. In my high school years, what I really loved drag racing and that kind of stuff. So trains, kind of just like they do with everybody. When you're a kid, I've never seen a young kid not like trains, watching them lay out and watching the train go around and smoke come out and all that kind of stuff. And then they wean off of it while they're going through their teenage years. And then when they get kids, get married and get kids, so they get back into it and want to recreate those childhood memories. And so for the train itself, that's the kind of way it was for me, other than the business part, how I got into the business of it and made it a business of mine. But I still put the train under the tree. Have to. I mean, when I say have to, it's because it's part of Christmas for me. So after that first 10 plate set, obviously the bug had bitten you, and you explained that you kind of went down the path that most of us go down of getting interested in other things. But your story kind of takes a little bit of a turn in terms of you got involved in the business side of the hobby. Tell me how that started and kind of give me a short version of how that evolved to the MTH that we know today. I was 12 years old. I started working for Williams, and he was building trains in his basement of his house, and one of my best friends worked there, and so I got the job there, and I was assembling couplers, 10 plate couplers for number 9s it was at the time, and he was reproducing the old 10 plate stuff, and it was $1.50 an hour, and minimum wage was $1.35 an hour, and I was too young to get a work permit, so he would pay me cash, and we'd have these old IBM cards and just write down the number of hours you had, and we'd turn them in whenever we wanted. There was no payday or anything like that. We'd just take these IBM cards and say, okay, and you build it up, and I wanted to buy a bike, so I'd just keep building up the hours until I saw enough hours where I could afford that bike and take it to him. And it was always, we learned that when we got paid, he would always round it up, he'd give us a tip, kind of a scenario. So if you had, for example, enough for $140, well, you wouldn't do it then. You'd wait until you were like at 175, and then you get 200 because he'd give you his tip. So it was amazing. We'd sit there and figure out, okay, when do you cut off these hours? Or I'm only going to work 3 more hours tonight, and we'd work into the night. I mean, 9, 10 o'clock. I mean, we were working crazy hours. We just as many hours as he'd let us come over his house. We'd come over. His wife would feed us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Bologna sandwiches for lunch would be always the bologna sandwiches, and into the evenings as much as we could work, and at $1.50 an hour, like I say, I was making at that time 12, 13, 14 years old, more than anybody that other friends that I knew. It was just a great job. I mean, before that, I was like trying to figure out a way to make money, and I think I had that entrepreneurial bug to do something. And when I got with Williams, he treated us like, he talked to us and treated us like adults. And we were working for this company, and we were building these trains, and we had to build them on time. We had to build them to a quality level and a speed, and we'd race who could do as many couplers and see if you can increase the volume and all that kind of stuff. So it was a great environment to learn.
Absolutely. It sounds really neat. And it sounds like you were working with a few guys. Anybody in particular who we would know today?
Jeff Strank, who works for me in my service department, he hired me. He was working there about a year before I was. And then Ryan Eisman, who was my first employee, he kept pounding on the door all the time. He'd come by every week and want a job there because, Jeff and I were working there, and he and Jeff were neighbors. And so he got a job there. And then later on in the time, Andy Edelman worked there. Mark Hipp, who works for me, was painting for us. Our girlfriends would work there, and friends of ours, as many people as we could find to bring in to put together these trains.
Now, working for Jerry at the time and looking back on that, what were some of the most important things you learned from Jerry about the toy train business at that early age?
Well, the toy train business, what kinds of products people like, but you learn that really from the market, not so much from him. He was learning at the same time I was learning it as far as selling. But what Jerry taught me was, how to be an entrepreneur. I mean, he was just a very, and also about life. I mean, you talk about taking 5 people in your life that has affected or changed your life, and he's clearly one of them. I mean, he taught me, as far as risk taking and what to, how to respond to things. It's hard to go into all the different things, but oftentimes in my life, I go back and think about, who told us this. We talked Jeff and Brian and I. That's the way Jerry, taught us, and he was a great mentor. I mean, I can still remember, and even some of the lessons came, the frustrating is all I was making $7.50, towards the end when I worked with him, but I made that for, over 3 years. And I went to him, I said, can I get a raise? And I was skating him for years. I never asked him. And I said, I'm still making $7.50 an hour. And, and he said, Hoss, and he always would call us that, Hoss, you're never going to make another dime from me per hour because you don't belong here. You belong working for yourself. And the more I give you, the more you're going to stay hooked here. And so this is not where you're going to stay. And I was like, wow, I mean, how do you know that? But he saw it. I mean, and I'll never forget with the standard gauge tooling in 1983. He was in the real estate commercial development, and he taught me about that, and I got into the real estate area from him on that. But he was going to sell the standard gauge stuff, and I wanted to buy it and didn't have the money. And he said, why don't you go talk to, it was one of his dealers at the time. I'm not going to name the names, but one of his dealers at the time. Why don't you call him and see if you can work a deal with him, and you guys go into partnership about it, because he has the money and he sells a lot of our tin plate stuff. And so I said, okay. So I called the guy, and he goes, no. He says, I'll hire you. You can work for me, but I want to buy it for myself. I don't want any partners. So he called Jerry and says, I'll give you the cash right now. What do you want for it? And I'm like, Jerry, and Jerry said, don't worry, Hoss. That ain't happening. So he told him, nope, it's for sale, but it's only for sale with Mike. And so I ended up, borrowing the money. My dad put in his money. I had all my money. And, the story's been told, I put out the black and white brochure out, advertised all the stuff, got enough orders, had everybody prepay for it, was able to buy the tooling, buy the parts, deliver the train, and pay my dad back off. And I had no money, but I had all the tin plate tools, and that's kind of how I got into the manufacturing business itself.
That's pretty special that Jerry recognized that at the young age that you were at, that you already had that entrepreneur spirit about you, and that he pushed you hard enough that he knew that you needed to go out and do your own thing. That's neat that you had that kind of relationship with him, and that's something that doesn't come along that often anymore.
No, and like I say, he's somebody that is, he'll always be close to my heart.
Absolutely. Now I've got to ask, you've done standard gauge reproductions from almost the beginning. And I think you gave me kind of a hint of this by your first train set being a pre-war set. Did you get into the standard gauge reproductions just because that's what Williams was doing at the time, or were you fond of them yourself?
No, the pre-war set I had was my dad's, and it was tin plate cars, but die-cast engine, so it wasn't. It wasn't what drove it. It was the building them. I mean, they're art, and when we built them, I know what it takes. And my one of my things I wanted to save up and be able to buy and afford was a 381. I mean, that thing was just so beautiful, and we created it from the parts, the oily, grimy parts, and then sent them down to Baltimore, had them plated, went down, picked them up, brought them back, painted the things, and put all the brass trim, and the brass was plated brass and clear coated. And when you put the thing together, it was amazing. And you took care not to scratch anything, and bend the tabs so they didn't get scratched, because at the end, if you slip with the screwdriver, wham, the whole thing's gone. So seeing what went into it and how much time we spent, I wanted one of those, and I liked it, and I liked them all. I mean, they were they put up on the shelf in his office. I still remember his office, and he had all the standard gauge trains lined up on the walls, and he had original stuff that he was buying for his own collection. I mean, Jerry Williams got into it because he was a standard gauge collector, and he had some rare stuff, and so being at the shows and hearing the customers talk about it and seeing all the different things, and then reading the story about Joshua Lionel Cohen. Wow, what a that book by Hollander is just if anybody hasn't been to Lionel Trains, it's a must read of what kind of guy he was and how he got into it. It's art. It's really art, and how it took off. And so I appreciate it from that way. Like, people collect art. I look at them, the tin plate trains, and if it wasn't for them, there would be no O gauge and HO trains. For these scale guys, if it didn't start that way with the tin plate stuff.
It's pretty clear you guys, as a company, still have an affinity for those trains and appreciate, what goes into them, because, I mean, that's become such a big core of your line over the years, at a time when standard gauge was thought to be fading away. I mean, here you guys are reproducing some of these sets that have never been redone before. And, like I said, I think you almost have to have an appreciation to put your company out there and say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep doing these, even if the market isn't the most dynamic market for it.
It's not. It's a niche market, and I'm really excited. This year is our first year. I got a license now with Markland, and we're making the 1930 era Leipzig station, which is a station over in Germany. But it's a very, very rare 20,000 plus station station that's out there. Very hard to find, and I've been working with Markland, doing some other work for him, subcontracting, making motors for him, making some other products, HO products for him, and so I said, hey, what about this tin plate stuff? And that's really not their thing, and tin plate is not big marketplace over there. I said, well, if you don't want to do it, how about me? I would love to do it, and I'd love to make other Markland tin plate, because their history is just older than Lionel's, and some of the stuff they made and how they made it. And for us to go out and get this station made was really tough. I mean, if you look at the pattern of the decorations on these two ramps that go up on either side, and how the brick pattern matches. It is art. It really is art, and what those guys did and what they had for toys back then, it's amazing. So that history and what went into the things and the appreciation for that is I love it. That's what I have in my basement.
You just said something that I find really interesting, and knowing the history of your story, I think this is a good theme for it. if you're not going to do it, why not me? And we see that pattern happen a lot with your history in the hobby. Specifically you working with Lionel on the Lionel Classics line, and then also you helping Lionel introduce scale steam into their line back in the early '90s when you worked with them, and then going and starting MTH. When you say something like that, if you're not going to do it, why not me? Do you go after those kind of projects because you have a passion for them, or just because you see a niche that needs filled?
Well, I like when somebody says you can't, when I say can't do it or won't do it. I kind of, that's kind of a challenge for me. The Z4000 transformer pops into mind. The DCS system is another one. We did the first articulated die-cast steam engine that was out there. A lot of that stuff, the biggest scale freight car, there was a lot of first type of a scenario that even in the template, Jerry never did any steam engines before, but why not? Because it was the die-cast frame, the die-cast parts 20 was too much money. So his tolerance for the risk to go that far and believe it. And I just, in my mind, I knew it. And when I believe it's going to sell, and even going for the HO and stuff, seeing synchronized pump and smoke in an HO engine, I just know that's going to sell. And so in my mind, and some people, I don't know. And so that drives me to, yep. Then we got to do it. I mean, I got to try it. And so being told, kind of stubborn that way. If I'm being told it can't be done, I like to. And I think it can, then I'll try it and show you can.
It's funny. Andy has told me in previous interviews on the show, especially talking about the R&D process at MTH, that the Skunk Works team, who kind of come up with all these new and innovative ideas over at MTH, they won't even tell you about some of their ideas because they know if you see something that you're passionate about, that you're just going to go after it. And just talking with you in the first few minutes here, it's very clear that when you get passionate and you get excited about something, you're like a heat-seeking missile that you're going to take off after it and do whatever it takes to make that happen. Is that a pretty fair assumption? That's
a fair assumption. It's just like with this Wi-Fi DCS right now. I mean, you get that in your hands, and it's unbelievable. I mean, when I say unbelievable, and then the opportunities that I see beyond just controlling the train, what the DCS does now, there's a lot of ideas that I see, and we've got to get there, and we've got to get there quick. I mean, I think that, getting any interest of new people into this hobby, going, using the iPad, iPhone that they carry in, I can see it now. You're in a hobby shop. The guy walks in. I spend some time in a hobby shop down here in Florida in the wintertime when I go to the Dolphin games, and on the Saturdays go over there, and I brought this iPad with me, and you see a guy walk in, and he's got an iPhone hooked to his hip, and you say, you want to run this train? And they can take their phone and download the app, the free app, and start running the train on the dealer's layout. Now that's going to sell trains. I mean, when you walk in, there's no question, because now that train is in his phone, and he's controlling it with what he owns, and there's a connection there, and it's like, okay, I mean, this is cool. I mean, this is different. This is not something that you normally go into retail, download an app, and start playing with the thing in the store as it's yours. And so I think that has a huge potential, and I want to see it. I don't think I overestimated, but I think it's going to be big. It's just like in DCS, the whole concept started is, I have a train under my Christmas tree, and the train's running around and making a whole lot of noise, and we got company coming over, and as soon as they walk in the door, my wife turns to me and says, turn that train off, it's too noisy. And, what sells a train? Train sells when it runs, not when it's turned off. When it's turned off, it looks broken, right? So,
right.
Yeah, okay, well, let them see it run first to verify that it runs, right? And so then you turn it off. Most people would. I mean, it is noisy. So I'm thinking, that train, and what she wants is background music, right? You go turn the Christmas music on in the background, you know, you're having a party or people over, just, you know, a little Christmas music type of thing, get everybody in the mood. Why doesn't the train play the Christmas music while it's going around the track? And keep the train running. Let the train be the focal point. So I went to the engineers. I said, I want to play music out of that train in real time. I want to hook up a CD player to it, and I want to play music out of it. And the first engineering firm looked at it, and after $10,000 later, said, that's impossible. He said, the amount of the amount of information going down the rail with this bumpy, you know, the noise coming off the electric noise coming off the rollers and bouncing and making a whole bunch of noise, it's going to break up, and it's just not going to work. It's not possible what you're trying to do. I said, don't tell me it's not possible. So when I found another engineering firm, found this guy, and he says, I think I got some ideas of how to do it. And he you know, worked on it. So fine, keep trying. We got to keep trying this, because I believe that there's going to be, to get, you know, a market for this. You know, it could read books to the kids. You know, kids can follow along the bedtime story running in the boys' room or girls' room, plays the bedtime story. You know, it's lots of things I can imagine. So finally, second engineering firm came back and had a demo, and it was close. And with filtering and all this, we can do this. And so it got to be, and that's how really DCS, if it wasn't for that need that I saw out there, that I thought that would be something. Now, obviously, with DCS, a lot more is, you know, you got remote control and running multiple trains on the same track and talking through the trains and getting custom sounds and all the other stuff that goes with it and can be added once you have that ability to communicate at that high speed. You know, here we are 14 years later, and without DCS, I was dead. I mean, Lionel had me. They thought they had me. They went and gave TMCC to everybody for free. You know, Atlas and Weaver and Third Rail at the time and K-Line. Everybody got it, but MTH. What they didn't know, that the same 3 months later, after they gave it away, after they made it, announcement it was free to those guys who were giving them licenses, and not me, because I wouldn't have sound, because we were doing them with QSI, but we didn't have command control. They had the TMCC command control, and here we announced this, and I have a sound system and a control system, and now they've published their code, so now my system runs both. So their products and our products. So. Anyway,
one of those things that, that's the fun thing about business and competition, and that's kind of been the history between MTH and Lionel is one has always spurred the other, and as much interesting things have gone on over the years between the two companies. It's been good for the hobby overall that you two can coexist, and you guys continually push each other to do more. And
no question about it. Competition is a good thing.
Absolutely.
More gas stations on the intersection, the more everybody does. So there's no question. And it's just like for me right now in the European market, I go over there and we're starting to make O-gauge trains. And right now it's us and Lentz making European steam engines, die-cast steam engines, and there may be some brass guys out there. But really, in the marketplace, it's us and Lentz. And boy, do I want Markland to get into that marketplace, and or some of the other bigger guys. Why? Because they got clientele out there. They start selling to it, and somebody's going to buy ours also. The more, the merrier. I think it is as far as competition. It brings in more consumers. There's no question about it.
You mentioned you've done some subcontracting work with Markland. How does a company like Markland respond when you come in and propose these new ideas, things that are not necessarily, I don't want to say that they're not sound business ideas, but they're definitely not something that is of the normal arena. Are they receptive to ideas when you guys come in and say, hey, let's shake things up over here a little bit?
It doesn't work like that with them. I mean, Germans are pretty. They know what they want to do. I mean, my relationship isn't isn't the same as it was, say, with Lionel. I mean, we both spoke the same language and all that. But so it's more of, okay, what do you want me to do? And I do what you want me to do, and I'll do it your way. I don't, So the template thing was, a suggestion to a guy, and they basically said, "No, that's not what we want to do. That's fine, but would you be interested in licensing it?" And they said yes. And it's more of from a relationship standpoint, because the relationship's growing in different ways, and that's one of those ways that it can grow. And so I don't. It's not me telling them anything.
It's a much softer approach. It's what can we do for you to help you?
Yeah, I'm getting older. I'm not as hard driving as I was.
I got to ask you, doing all these projects that you've done over the years and having to overcome a lot of obstacles, whether it's been tooling up these massive die-cast engines, figuring out the new technology. Were there ever moments where you just stopped dead in your tracks over the last 35 years and gone, "What am I doing here?"
Yeah, a lot.
How did you get over those moments when you're just like, "What am I doing?"
Well, that is, that's a difficult. When I say difficult, when you're older you get, I guess you ask yourself that more often. When you're young, heck, it's a lot of fun. So, it's the other thing is what I do is I get more involved in the actual what I like to do, and that is making products or developing things, working with the suppliers to do something new. I mean, there's so many different things in HO, the HO automatic coupler. No one's ever had an automatic coupler in HO, and we developed that. And then you look at those HO passenger cars, those flexible diaphragms that have paint on them or ink on them that flex, so it's like the real one. No one's ever had that there. The Z4000, the most powerful UL-approved transformer on the marketplace, has been there. One of our best and steadiest selling products. That was years of work, and that I really like. I really like that stuff, working with that. To make another boxcar and paint it another scheme, like guys that do that, and yep, we made those a while ago, but to make a freight car is like kind of falling off a log at this point. It's not, there's not a lot of, I guess for me, fun in that. And things like, the app and how that works. And, that's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not developing it, but, just watching that process, following that process, pushing that process, trying to get, to the end, to me, I enjoy that. So what I do is I just put myself in the things that I like to do and like to get involved in, and so I don't have to ask myself, what am I doing? I got too many things to do.
Right. Well, it's neat to hear that the guy that founds the company wants to be on the cutting edge of what's coming next. You aren't just content to sit and let things happen, that you want to be involved in these processes of figuring out new and innovative ways to get your product out into the market, whether it's an O gauge, HO, S gauge, European or American market. I mean, you guys have your hands in a lot of different places, and clearly being a diversified company works well for you guys. I want you to think back, though, for a second. Having done this for 35 years, what do you feel that MTH's largest contribution to the O-gauge hobby has been? What are you most proud of bringing into the market?
Yeah, I think it's wow. That's there's lots of products that we brought in, like say Z4000, scale steam engines. I mean, die-cast scale steam is an option to line out. A lot of people don't realize this, but up till 1989 actually, Rhino had only made two scale steam engines, the B6 switcher and the in 1940s and the scale Hudson in 1950, and then re-ran that in 1990. Those were the only two scale steam engines in die-cast ever made, for 90 years or 89 years. And so, before that, now Williams, I would say, give him a lot of credit. He went out and started making more of mass production brass engines, kind of hybrid engines. There was no die-cast in them, but there were brass engines that were affordable. Brass engines in scale were not affordable to the average guy, and they were in a lot of cases not painted, and they didn't run very well, and so Williams really paved the way that way, and then we started building Weaver's brass engines and continued that from 90 on for a little while. But so the market really had the scale engines, but they were brass. But die-cast scale engines, up until we built the Redding T1 and L3 Mohawk and the S2 turbine and the Shea and the Alco PAs. There was no scale steam engines, except those two. So bringing that to the marketplace was, I think, big. But the track system, everybody's used to it now. But we were the first ones in O-gauge making with a road bed. There was a problem. The problem was with the old tubular track. You set it up on the carpet, and you have a grease ring around the tree. There's a commercial out there now that shows where the old tree was and this black ring around it. Well, that was the track, and the oil and the grease dropping down through there. And so to bring a track out that was, nickel silver, solid rail that you can stand on so the kids could run across it and not going to hurt anything, and built for Christmas, and we started that, and then vinyl followed it, and that's fine, and that's competition, and but it started, we started that. And so I thought, I think that those kinds of bringing things to the marketplace was, at the time there were challenges, and now they're kind of just taken for granted. They're the norm in the hobby, and so it was fun to be, sit back and reflect, and that doesn't make any money or anything, but those are kind of things I remember.
Right, and it's interesting, I'm just sitting here listening to you talk and thinking about how far we've come in the last 20 years in terms of, we have large power supplies like the Z4000 and the ZWL now. We have, track with road bed built into it. Most of us won't even look at an engine anymore unless it's scale, and that's all stuff that's really come about in the last 20 years. And the competition between these two companies has really kind of driven, each company to try and outdo the other one. And like I said, you're right. I think we take a lot of this stuff for granted, but you say, let's throw everything in a time machine and let's go back to 1988 right now and see how much you like the hobby. 1988 feels like the dark ages compared to where we're at now.
Oh, no question. Even it's not just necessary steam. Actually, the sales of the Rail King is bigger than the steam. I mean, in steam, the Rail King steam engines outsell the scale steam engines. But we put our full purpose down. It's a philosophical difference. Lionel and us have, and that's fine. It creates two different spaces. We put our full system, full Pro Sound 3 system in our starter sets. I mean, the beginning. So when the guy buys his first set, he has the same sound system, the same controls, the same ability to expand as the guy who has the $1,500 steam engine. It's the same. So what happens is then when the guy thinks, I really like this after Christmas, and boy, I'd like to make it a little bigger and start adding and that type of thing, and he sees the digital system, if that thing had a controller that just controlled it, or has just AC power, and then he goes and he's looking at this digital control. It's being operated in the hobby shop or at his club or something like that, and he maybe bought 2-3 engines, that are conventionally controlled, or has 3 different controllers that are controlling 3 different engines, and then says, well, I'm going to go into this digital world of DCS or Legacy or whatever it is, and then someone has to tell him, but all that stuff you bought, you're not running that. Well, wait a minute, I got a big investment in all this stuff. And so it discourages him to take that next step. And, now our prices of our train sets are more, but, the guy who buys his train sets and this hobby is not a cheap hobby. So we want the guy who's going to stay in this hobby and expand in this hobby. And so if he buys a $400 train set and then goes to buy the Switch, he's not saying, wait a minute, the Switch cost me almost as much as the train set did for the 2 switches. It's the same. And if that's the case, I think we're not going to keep people in it. I'm looking for hobbyists, and that's our focus is to get guys to get in this hobby and expand on it and be model railroaders, not just the one-time sale for a Christmas gift or a birthday gift or that type of thing. So I think we can do our part to try to expand the hobby that way.
It's interesting to hear you say that because, and I've heard Andy say this before too, that really MTH's philosophy seems to be, let's take the big step up out of it in terms of, we're going to give you everything up front in terms of, yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more up front, but we're removing that second step that once you decide to expand and start growing, it's not near as painful that second trip back to the hobby shop. And I think you're right. I think yes, there's fundamental differences between the two companies, but there's room for both companies to exist because you guys have just chosen to do things a little bit differently.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's and that's the kind of the fun part with this Wi-Fi app. We spent more money to do it this way, but we want it to be, the guy doesn't have to have Wi-Fi or internet access in his house. You do not need to have to have a router. It can either be hooked up to your, if you have internet access, you can put it in your home network, or you can flip a switch on the thing and have its own network. And you have to buy one box to plug into your TIU. You don't have to buy a separate box for every switch or 3 or 4 switches and all the existing system. I'm not going to ask people to go out and buy any new hardware on their DCS system that they can plug it into an old TIU and they're running Wi-Fi. So it's we have to think about how we can keep these people and keep them expanding without the shock of whatever they have being antiquated. So to do that, there's more money and more that we can get quick buck or look at it and say, well, let's make everybody buy a new TIU. Can you imagine we sold their DCS systems, all these guys, but I'm sure, and if we did, there would be the core guys, the guys who had 50 engines, the we always say the Marty Fitzhenrys of the world. He'll buy one, right? And so I can have a small market out there that will buy one of whatever you make, or you can design it and go the route of trying to get a lot more people into it, and that's kind of the route we've chosen.
It sounds like a lot of things that have inspired you with DCS, with the real tracks, etc., have come out of practical experience. You talk about a Christmas party where your wife tells you to turn the train off because it's too noisy. You talk about the grease ring around the tree. Do you still find yourself, after 35 years, have those lightning bolt moments of inspiration of, this has been a problem in the hobby for a long time. How can I fix it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not necessarily my own, but the customers. I mean, I go to I've been to the York Train Show ever since I was, I think in 1975 or 74. I went to my first York, and I missed one York since then. And you're talking to customers. I go to a lot of hobby shops. I go to the shops, and I sell products. I love to sell products and show it and demonstrate and tell the guy why it's why I think it's the best and then what you do is you get feedback and you listen, and when you hear what their complaints are or could it do this or does it do this or that, and that feedback not being in touch with what the customer wants is, I think, the death in business if you're not listening. So, I'm always looking and listening for, how the market's going, what the consumer wants, and what their problems are, and what needs to be solved, and how we can do things better. I mean, look, when you're making as many different products that we make, and there's the downside to that is with all the different types of products, there's a lot more to go wrong. And model train, and some of those trains got 400 different parts on them. And if something's messed up with it, you have problems. And that's the most frustrating, I think, is the most frustrating thing for me is, you got a customer that comes up and has a problem, with the thing. It just, those are the days that I want to be out of this business. So, because, I didn't do it right, and we didn't do enough, and the things not right, and it's frustrating, and I know why it happens. I know sometimes we figure out and we know exactly how it happened, and we figure out how to fix it, but it still happened, and those are tough, but that's how you learn, and you just got to keep going, and keep moving on. I'm not to quit isn't going to fix that.
From a hobbyist standpoint, it does my heart good to hear you say that when something doesn't work right, that you take it personally. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions in this hobby. And I hear a lot of guys complain about it, or well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a small vocal minority that has made it their job to, whenever something goes wrong, take it so personally and think that, these manufacturers don't care, that it's just about making a product as cheap as they possibly can and pumping it out the door, that they don't care when things are wrong. But to hear you say that you guys take it personally when something doesn't get executed to the best of your ability, I think that's probably one of the most important things that I want our listeners to hear, whether it's MTH or Lionel. The guys that are running these companies do take it personal when things go wrong, and it's not just about making a product and turning it out the door as cheap as they possibly can.
Well, model trains, you couldn't compete if you made them as cheap as you can. I mean, we could do a lot of things, plastic gears and plastic, and wheels that gone from that are plastic side frames, and there's a lot of money that we spent that aesthetically can make it look the same and have it, it still run around the track and that type of thing. So you could make those choices, but we try, we spend extra money to do it, but again, there's no way. I don't think anybody making the number of items. If I was making one train a year and I can perfect that thing, I know I can perfect it and get it so that there's never a problem. And we have products like that are, that you never hear about. But there's no question those other ones. You have to care. If you don't care and if you don't try to make changes, you're out of business. I mean,
Sure.
I don't care what product you make. But, the thing about model trains is, and it's because of the history. I mean, it's been passed down as an heirloom. There's not a lot of electromechanical products that you have in your house that you expect to last 50 years and that you can always get a part for. You go in your kitchen and there's so many of them. When your microwave goes bad, you don't go and start looking for the circuit board or the glass door, cracked or whatever. You don't, your blender, dropped or whatever. Maybe you change a coffee pot or something like that. But most of those products, when they go bad, you discard them. And some of them are not cheap. A microwave, not cheap. You discard them and you get a new one. Or TV set. Your TV blacks out. You don't send it back to RCA and say, hey, I bought this for good money 20 years ago, and I want this thing fixed, and I want, I just took it, I don't use it that much. It's in my basement, and it's got a bad screen. I need a new board for it. And that, it's a difference, if you think about it, of commercial products, of things people use that watches and like I say, think of all the electromechanical things. So there's not a lot of them that has a expectation that it will always work.
Right. And it's interesting, again, we've had Andy on the show in the past, and he brought up a good point that, not only are we trying to build something that's going to last, a couple generations, but the things that we didn't necessarily plan on being retroactive products, here we are. You guys have just released the PS2 to PS3 upgrade kits in the past year. Not only are you guys working to make things that last, but the stuff that have kind of been left behind, you guys are offering solutions to keep those old trains relevant. And you don't have to do that.
No, that's right. And not in that, but just like I said, for us in the TV world or in the TV world, they just went from the digital to, from the grab ears, and you had to buy a conversion box or whatever to make your old TV or somewhere just phased out. The DCS, if we said, okay, anything with the RS-232 COM port on it, any of those old TIUs, sorry, you're not going to be able to do the Wi-Fi with this. We want you to buy one with the USB port on it, and and that we've done for the last 3 years. And if you don't really have one, you really need to go step up and buy one of those. But that there would be outrage if we did something like that. How, I was your loyal customer 15 years ago when I bought this electronic thing, and I don't know what electronics 15 years ago that you still have. I mean, I remember back then the cell phones were huge, and today very few people have the same electronics they've had for that. But in this industry, you better have that. If you don't, it's not a good thing.
Right, right. I want to take a minute and have you look forward a little bit. You know, we've been talking a lot about innovation in the hobby. Are there things in your mind that you would like to see come into the hobby that the technology just hasn't caught up with yet? And what gets you excited about the future?
Well, I would say the answer to that is obviously yes, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because I do have competition. But there are some really cool stuff that you're going to be able to do. You know, DCS, it's a great platform because the technology is built off of the cell phone technology. It's high speed. It works different than DCC. A lot of people in the HO, that is the technology. It's 1970s technology. It's very slow, and you can only do a certain amount of things, and you only get a certain amount of features, and then it slows down so bad it's not usable in the world that the marketplace or the O-Gauge marketplace has got to. And you got Lionel's with the radio signal going around the train, and you can only go so far with that. And our technology, I believe, is the best, the fastest, and the one that's set up for the most innovations. And there's some things that are coming that are going to be really, really cool. And then also, look, that investment, and we've invested in the neighborhood of about $7 million at this point in the technology of DCS, the sound systems, and now it allowed us to even get into HO. Without DCS, when I say DCS, I say not the control part of it, but the sound part of it, which does DCC, full DCC. The engines respond to it. It's brought now our O-Gauge engines, our two-rail engines, which those two-rail guys out there, they always wanted DCC, but because we got into the HO and because we had a sound system allowed us to get into the HO, which then allowed us to get DCC back into O-Gauge, and they got a control system that they're going to be able to run a G-Gauge train, a standard gauge train, a O-Gauge train, a HO train, and I want to see. I scare the techs at our place. I want to do N gauge and Z gauge, and because the technology is going to get smaller and smaller, and with that same technology, synchronized puff and smoke and all that in different realms. There's just a lot you can sound and the quality of sound and the control. A lot you can do.
Sounds like there are some exciting days ahead for MTH in terms of what you guys are going to pull off next. I want to ask you from a personal standpoint, though, after 35 years, are trains still allowed in your house? Are you able to walk out of the office at the end of the day and still want to go do something at home, or at the end of the day, are you just trained out?
Well, I have trains at home, and I don't have them in Florida. I have them in Maryland. I have a massive layout down there to standard gauge and O-Gauge, and I got trains all in my office at home. Anybody that comes over and visits and comes for the first time see those trains, eyes as big as all, and there's a lot of interest that way. But like I say, I appreciate them for the what went into them and what they are and what they represent and the history of trains in the United States. And I appreciate them for that way. I look at them that way, so they'll always be around, whether I'm in this business or not in this business. I'll have trains because it's I guess the art I choose to have in my house. I'm not into paintings and all that type of thing. I look at that trains, whether it's a HO train or whether it's a O-Gauge train. It's art to me.
Looking at it from an art standpoint, I'm going to ask you to do a very, very difficult thing then. You guys have produced an obscene amount of product over the last 35 years, and that's a great thing. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to pick a favorite. Out of everything you guys have done, what's your favorite product you guys have done in the last 35 years?
Well, I say favorite project. I mean, I would say the Z4000 of building it was the most proudest one. I was kind of the project manager on that one. The other one, the DCS, Dave Kriebel in Michigan, that's his baby. I mean, he's got to be proud of that. I'm proud of it, and that I had input in all that he lived and breathed. That's kind of what I did on the Z4000. So from a manufacturing side of it, that Z4000, was a 3-year killer of my life, and thought I lost a huge amount of money, and it didn't work a number of times and couldn't get through UL, and had to get UL to change the specification 697 and to allow a transformer even that big. It wasn't even allowed at that time. So there's a lot into it that makes me appreciate it. But from just a train, and what I like is 400E. It's in our logo. I love that 400E. That 400E means to me, I tell the story. I think the story is written in our book, the Toy Story you can get when you're on the club. You join the club, you can buy that book. I think you can buy it, from us at York, whatever. But when I first bought that original 400E, I saw that thing. I said, I told my mother, I put it on the mantle. I said, this is going to make me rich someday. This engine is it. And, for what it's done for me, and again, it's the most beautiful standard gauge train out there that I think. And so I'd have to say it's 400E if I had to pick one. And that's why we just keep on making them.
I'm going to wrap up with this question, and I've tried to ask this question to everybody who I've spoken with that has been in a leadership position, whether Lionel or in this case you leading MTH. When you leave all of this behind at some point, and when you look back, and I asked Dick Kuhn this question, and I think it's an appropriate question to ask you as well, considering the role MTH has played in the evolution of O-Gauge. When you leave this all behind someday, and you're retired or doing whatever you're doing, and you and Andy are gray and playing golf down in Florida somewhere, and just out of the spotlight, what do you want your legacy to be in this hobby? How do you want people to have seen what you've done for the hobby?
I don't know. I mean, I'd say the other way. I just don't want people not to like me, because of what I've done in this hobby. I mean, I think I probably have more people that don't like me than like me in this hobby because, they don't like, our aggressive approach. Even, back when we were running comparison ads, people don't like that. They don't like competition that way. And so I would say, I would rather them look at me for the person I am rather than what I've done in the business, and hope that the business doesn't define me, that, the people that I've met over the years and became friends with, and, I guess that's what matters, and that I, do the right thing, and that, after this world, I nothing I've done in this business will cause me to veer off the Met.
You've been listening to MTH's Mike Wolf. Mike, congratulations on 35 years, and I hope you'll come back again and talk with us, and we can dig a little bit deeper. But again, congratulations on 35 years, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks a lot, Derek. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, the story from the man himself, Mike Wolf, and MTH celebrating 35 years of making some really cool O-Gauge trains. Thanks to Mike for coming on to the show. I'm sure he'll be back again in the future. Something that Mike mentioned that I wanted to make sure that you guys caught is that the MTH story, which is a book that was written, it's been a few years now, but it's a great book that overviews the history of MTH, really goes into the backstory of MTH trains, and also chronicles some of the other things that they have done along the way. That is available through the MTH website, and as Mike said, you can pick it up from them at York, etc. And if you run into Mike, I'm sure he'll be happy to sign a copy for you. A few more notes before we get out of here this time. If you want to stay on top of the latest O-Gauge news from Notch 6, head on over to our website, which is notch6.com. It's NOTCH and the number 6.com. On the left-hand side, you will see a place to join our email list. Go ahead and sign up. I don't send too many emails, but when I do, it's usually about guests that are coming onto the show, things we have coming up in the future, things I want your opinion on, etc. It really is the way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the show, so join the email list. If you are a social media person, check out facebook.com/notch6. Again, that's NOTCH and the number 6, all one word, facebook.com/notch6. You'll see photos of my layout, random thoughts about O-gauge trains, and other fun things. And we'll also give you a heads up on who's coming onto the show and when episodes are going to air. If we're going to make any last-minute changes or adjustments, that's where we post the information to the release schedule, etc. is at facebook.com/notch6. Finally, the last thing before I go, and this would be very, very helpful to me. The one way that we can really make this show grow is for you folks to leave a review for us on iTunes. I know that's asking for a lot in terms of it takes a few minutes to go in, find the show, and to write and leave a review. But that's how we grow the show. And so if you leave me a review, and I'm going to keep watching it over the next couple of months, I've got a couple of things floating around in the closet still. Some extra Lionel D145 posters that have been slightly show used. I've got a couple of Madison Hardware t-shirts running around. So if you leave a review and I see it, and I'll randomly maybe select somebody that has left a review here at some point in the future, and we'll send you a couple of cool little things. But those reviews on iTunes are like gold to us, and it really moves the show up in the rankings and helps us out. One final thing, there is a listener to this show. His name is Spence, who has not been feeling so hot the past couple of weeks, and he's on the road to recovery, and just wanted to use the end of the show here to send a shout out to Spence. Say, Spence, thanks for being a great listener. I hope you're feeling better soon, buddy, and we wish you all the best in the world. That's going to do it for this episode of Notch 6. Don't forget Lionel Volume 1 2015 Catalog Show, February 2nd, 9 a.m. Eastern. We hope to see you here. Until next time, keep it in Notch 6.
Thanks for listening to Notch 6, the only podcast dedicated to O-gauge trains. You can find every episode on our website, notch6.com, or on iTunes and Stitcher. We'll see you again soon. Until then, be sure to keep it in Notch 6. The following has been a production of Notch 6 Media and is intended for private use only. This show may not be copied or redistributed without express written consent. This show copyright 2015, all rights reserved.